Hello, everybody. We have Jeremy Reisman today. This is Lions on the Prowl and DSA presenting tonight question and answers with Jeremy Reisman. He is the head editor at Pride of Detroit. So I'm thrilled, man. I'm thrilled today to have you here. Thank you for doing this for us tonight.
Oh, no problem. Good to be back so soon.
Yeah, you might be a fixture every week. I don't know what's going to happen, man.
that must mean the reviews were good, huh?
Yeah. Ratings are up. No, I'm kidding. Okay. All right. I want to start introducing the panel members today. I'm going to do a little reveal here, hopefully, if I can get this thing working right. All right. So I have today with me, I have 313 JMO. What up, JMO?
What's good, man? What's good, y'all? I was not on the last time we had Jeremy on, so I'm sure he'll say something that I don't understand, and I have to combat him on. So I'm ready.
He is all fired up and ready to go, folks. We have Nomus J with us today. What's up, Nomus?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Let's get to it. Back in the building. Let's go.
Yeah, and we have Luke G with us today.
Hey, what's going on? So, Luke, let me just go ahead and get this out the way. Jeremy, you was right. I was wrong. I'm eating my crow with pride. You see what I did there? With pride. We are Pride Nation. So, you was right. He still went against his formula, Jeremy, but you was right.
Hey, you know what? No better way to start the podcast than hearing about how right I am.
And listen, even a blind squirrel gets a nut. We cannot be crazy about this. No, I'm just messing with you. No, you got it right. And I was wrong. I think the evidence supported what I was saying, but I also think that he went against it. So I'm happy you back and can't wait to talk some football.
All right. Hey, 313 JMO Heart of the City. Can you do roll for me, please?
What's good, everybody in the chat, man? Make sure you guys like the video. We got Peace and Quiet in the building. We got Mastermind, Ghost Gunner, One Team, One Dream, Real Detroit Lions fans. OMG, it's Lions Talk, Blue and Silver Phantom, Roche in the building, Ori in the building, Eric in the building, Pride Time B in the building. What's good, man?
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And we appreciate you. And we were going to have questions from you guys at the end. But to start, I'm going to start with Nomus. Nomus, do you have a question for Jeremy Reisman of Pride of Detroit?
Yes, Jeremy Reisman. How you doing today?
Great, man. Great.
That's good. I would first like to ask you, what was the energy like during draft night? I'm not sure if you were around by Quinn specifically, but what was the function or the flow of what was going on? We heard several different reports. Can you give us an inside look at what was, other details of that possibly?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to tell exactly what was going on in the, the virtual war rooms of the Lions fandom, but it sounds like, based on the personal stories that Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia talked about, there was a little bit of nervousness just because, you never know how these sort of things are going to work out when it's a new thing for everyone, the whole virtual part of it. But it sounds like the Lions really did their homework. And so, they had the Winnebago, which everyone found pretty funny. I found pretty funny.
I found that funny. That was
great. But it totally worked out well. There wasn't a hitch in anything that happened. Sounds like the Lions probably got their guy. And in terms of Lions fans, things kind of went smoothly. I mean, obviously, everyone that there was a twinge of disappointment amongst everyone, maybe even including the Lions, that they weren't able to trade out of that spot at 3. But based on the reports, if you believe the reports, there weren't any offers, and there's not a lot the Lions can do to change that. People can say maybe they should have masked it a little better. They should have thrown more smoke screens out there. But in the end, Miami played the patient game. They thought they could get Tua by waiting, and they were right. And so I think most people are pretty happy with how things played out, especially within the Lions war room. I think they're thrilled at the guy that they got. They're thrilled that the draft went off without a hitch, and they got 9 new players that could make a huge difference this year.
Okay, what about you, JMO? You got a question for our esteemed guest here today. See what I did there? That was nice.
I mean, yeah, I have many questions, but I'm gonna be honest with you. This question is for my Lions fandom sanity because it secretly has me going crazy because I can't get over it. And I'm gonna ask you, maybe you can give me some clarity and help me out. Why haven't the Lions paid Kenny Golladay yet? Are they gonna pay him before the season? And if they do, what is the contract? And really, I just really need to know why haven't they paid Kenny Golladay yet?
Well, I think the answer there is simple. Is just Bob Quinn doesn't really like to do his extensions this early in the offseason. He really likes to wait until training camp or right around training camp. So, summer months, June, July, maybe even into August. So we're getting there. I think it'll happen. The Lions really don't have any long-term plans right now at the wide receiver position, unless you're a really big Quinn Cephas fan. But I think there's no doubt in my mind personally that not only is Kenny Golladay deserving of an extension, but I think it's going to happen. You just kind of look at when these things happen. Stafford's extension happened in the summer. I mean, you also have to look at Taylor Decker, right? He's probably up for it as well. I think there's a little more question whether he's going to get it or not, but it's maybe unfortunate for the Lions that Golladay is coming off a Pro Bowl season in which he led the NFL in touchdowns because he's going to be asking for a lot, and rightfully so. I mean, he's knocking on the door of top 10 receiver in this league right now. In terms of what it's going to cost, though, that's a tricky one. Will he get top 10 money from as a wide receiver? I think the answer is probably yes. I mean, you look at the top 10. Adam Thielen is 10. Averaging $16 million a year. That's a hefty price, but it's something the Lions can currently afford. And typically with deals like that, they're going to be backloaded. So they have $20-30 million of cap space right now. They could certainly fit that in at the front, but they'll probably backload it a lot. But yeah, I do think it happens. You just, by looking at their track record, they typically don't like to do those extensions until the summer. And I think you're just going to have to be patient. Don't get too crazy. I know we were probably saying a lot of the same things about Graham Glasgow last year, but I think Kenny Golladay is.
I've seen the Lions not pay players.
That's true.
I've seen them pay players, but I've seen them not pay players too. So I just need this, this comfort, so I know we're good at that spot, and I don't need any hitches or anything happening with negotiations. He wants too much money, so now Kenny Golladay going into the season unpaid, looking like Dak Prescott. Like, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think at this point, I doubt the two sides have really talked much, and that should be comfort to you. That should be like, okay, they're just putting it off. They're just waiting until the summer. Now, if we get towards training camp and we still haven't heard anything, then you might start to worry a little bit. Even though the Lions tend to work in the shadows and don't release a lot of stuff to the public, agents like to play games with the media. Players sometimes like to play games with the media. Something should leak by mid-August, and if you haven't heard anything by mid-August, then you should start kind of wringing your hands. But until then, I think we're okay.
Sounds good. Luke, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here, man. I'm here.
All right, your turn, buddy. Your turn.
Okay, listen. I got a 2-part question. The first one is just laugh if you had a source on who we were taking with that first pick. Just if you had that source. You don't got to say yes or no, but if you had a source that was telling us who the pick was, my son says that you did. That's what he's telling me.
Oh. I thought that was Jeremy laughing.
No, that was my son telling me that he had a source. No, realistically, I know that there have been a lot of talks in terms of the Detroit Lions draft and the different things. And one of the things that I made a statement to was that if you take a cornerback 3rd overall, that cornerback has to be the number 1 corner. He has to be covering the top guys. What are your thoughts on that? Do you share that view?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not right off the bat, but at the very worst, by year 2, he needs to be the number 1 guy for sure. I think he's definitely going to be starting day 1. I think it's a toss up between him and Trufant, who really is the true number 1 corner out of the gate. The one thing that could hurt Okudah is this offseason, right? The fact that he's not in rookie minicamp right now, the fact that he might not get any on-field time during OTAs. That sort of stuff is obviously going to work against you when you got a 9-year vet in working right across from you. But yeah, I think Jeff Okudah absolutely needs to be your number 1 shutdown corner sooner rather than later. Remember, the whole point of this, building a team through the draft is getting production out of your guys while they're on that cheap rookie contract. So I know we're all kind of built to believe, the Darius Slay method where it takes 2 to 3 years to develop your cornerbacks. I don't really believe in that. I don't believe that's true of today's NFL. I don't think that should be true of your number 3rd overall pick. You need to get immediate contributions out of him, and I think they will. I think he very well could be the number 1 cornerback going into week 1. I think he probably won't be it right away, but you never know, because we've seen Ohio State cornerbacks in very recent memory come into the league and make the Pro Bowl their first year. It happens with Marshawn Lattimore. The other guy, I'm drawing a blank, but there's another Ohio State corner that's taken 5th overall a couple years ago. Denzel Ward, thank you. He made the Pro Bowl already once or twice. You need to get immediate contributions out of a guy like Jeff Okudah, and if that means him lining up with number 1 wide receivers right off the bat, then so be it.
Makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay,
So
let me just
go ahead. Second part.
Let me just follow that to the second part. When looking at the draft, there was some strange things coming out, and one of the things that came out was that Bob Quinn wanted Okudah, Patricia wanted. I know, so it's funny to me too. Patricia wanted Derek Brown. What being in that arena, what are you hearing about that? Is that a bunch of hoopla that they just made up from out of nowhere, or was there really some conflict with who they wanted at that pick at 3?
It's an interesting question, because there was definitely some rumbling about Derek Brown the night of the draft. I in fact, right before the draft started, about an hour before the draft, I got an anonymous, not just an anonymous person sent me an email saying he's going to be picked. Derek Brown is going to be the pick. He might even be number 1 on the Lions board right now. Now, obviously, that didn't turn out to be true, so I kind of have to take all the rumors about the Derek Brown love with a grain of salt. I did see that rumor that you're saying happened, and I don't know. Given how much this team puts into preparation and talks about just following the board, like there shouldn't be any tough decisions on draft night. You should have played out basically all scenarios. You follow your board strictly, and it makes the draft pretty easy. If that's the case, if they're being truthful when they're saying that's how they run the draft, I don't believe the report. I think they had their mind made up months ago whether they want Derek Brown or Jeff Okudah. And based on the rumors that I heard going up to the draft and during the draft and all sort of that stuff, it doesn't make sense for me that there would be that much of a disconnect between those two, because they draft similar guys. They have a similar vision. And I know Matt Patricia values cornerbacks quite a bit. I know he would love a big defensive lineman like Derek Brown as well. But to me, it would really surprise me if there was like a real big split between those two. I think both players, both guys probably liked both players a lot, but I think at least by Thursday morning, they probably knew who they were taking.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be honest. As I sip my Kool-Aid here, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think the Lions make the playoffs this year with the roster they have at this point?
I don't. I think it's possible. I think there are a lot of arguments that can be made to say that they will. I mean, you look at this division right now, I think it's at its low point that it's been in maybe 5 years or so. Green Bay isn't going to be the team that they were last year. I think they got a lot of lucky bounces, and Lions fans can attest to that firsthand. You look at the Chicago Bears, they didn't get much better, if at all better. Vikings lost a whole bunch of talent on defense. This division is ripe for the taking, but the Lions are still, I mean, I'm not convinced that this defensive roster is much better than it was last year. If it is better, it's not by much. And if that's the case, I can't be convinced that this defense is going to take a jump from being a bottom 5 defense to even an average defense. That's a big jump. And
man, I'm sorry. I just you preaching in such a way that the church got to say Oh my God! Go ahead, Jeremy. I'm sorry, Jeremy. Don't.
No.
Next time, let me know when the organ need to come in. Just give me a heads up. Go ahead.
I mean, the only thing I can say is that he has his guys now, right? And I think we talked about this a little bit last time I was on.
Yes.
You know, he's got his Jamie Collins, which is going to allow them to be a little more versatile. He's got, you know, Deron Harmon, a good coverage safety that he has a little bit of experience with. They have a bunch of new guys, but new doesn't always mean better. And so maybe this defense takes a step.
Jeremy, don't do him like that, Jeremy. Jeremy, don't do him. They can't. Oh, Jesus. Go ahead, preach. Let the church say yes. Go ahead.
But the one thing I will say in favor of the Lions potentially making the playoffs is the offense should be good. The offense was very good before Stafford went down. I wasn't a huge fan of the DeAndre Swift pick, but I will admit he could come in and make a big impact right away. Maybe make this team a little more balanced. I mean, we say this every time the Lions draft a running back. Maybe this is the year they finally also have a running game for Matthew Stafford. But we'll see. And then you just, if you look at the team that they were last year with Matthew Stafford, they were competitive. They were 3-4-1 by the time he got injured. They went toe to toe with a bunch of good teams, including Green Bay, a 12-4 team, in the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, if you stretch that out to a full season right now, you say, okay, well, if they can compete with these good teams, maybe not beat them, probably around an 8-8 season. Now, if everything bounces their way, maybe it's 10-6. Of course, maybe if things don't bounce their way and their defense doesn't improve, maybe we're talking 6-10. I do think they're kind of in that middle of the road, middle of the pack level in terms of talent, in terms of where Matthew Stafford can get them. But I just don't see this roster being good enough to take the NFC North. I just it relies on too much faith, and it's hard for me to have a ton of faith in Matt Patricia right now, given his track record here.
I just love you. I don't know if you married it. I don't know if you married or not, but I'm this. I just want you to know my love for you just grows every time we talk. I mean, outstanding. I mean, listen. Everything that he said, I've said before, but it's just that he said it so much better than I could.
Maybe I've been taking cliff notes, you know.
I mean, it's almost like he completes my sentence. You know how like that scene in the movie where he like, you had me at hello? What was that? Jerry Maguire? He had me when he said no, that defense, and I'm like, I tried to tell one of our counterparts, J-Mo, tell me about that defense.
And he said the same thing I said, that offense is going to be really good. So we're going to see what happens.
Fair enough.
Like, that's what I said.
I would give you that, J-Mo. He did say that, but that's the part I ignored because I had to. I wanted. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm sorry. Just go ahead. Just for the love.
You had to. No, I was going to ask you. You said you don't see them winning the division now.
So
I don't have them winning the division, but that doesn't mean they miss the playoffs. You still don't have them making it regardless, because I don't think they can win the division right now.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. But yeah, I think if there's a season in which they could win it, just due to the fact with I think every other NFC North team potentially getting worse this year, it's this year. It's just unfortunately the Lions also have to at the same time take a huge jump, and I'm the kind of person, you know, having watched the Lions for all 34 years of my life, I don't believe it until I see it. So I need to see some sort of evidence before I'm here, you know, picking this team to go 11-5 or even 10-6, really.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It just depends on if Swift is the golden boy these people love, because I wasn't really that high on Swift.
Yeah.
But he's going to have to be the golden boy for real.
Yep. No doubt.
But honestly, to me, though, even if Swift – I'm sorry if I interrupt, but even if Swift is not like the best product we could have, we still have 2 to 3 other running backs that need to show up. And that's what I've been saying is other people that have to be held accountable on this roster outside of this draft. We have guys we invested in, and it's about time we start reaping the benefits out of those assets that we brought in on this team. It's time for Hawkinson to make a jump. It's time for Carry-on to prove that he can live up to what we drafted and traded up to get. You know what I mean? It's time for other people to step up too, though, in all fairness.
No question.
All right, Jim. What happened to Jim?
You fall asleep?
I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to Tim now because Tim hadn't had a chance to ask a question yet.
Okay, what changes would you make as far as in bringing somebody else in to make that defense?
I'm here. Tim's talking.
We got you.
Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
What?
Testing one,
Yeah,
two.
Going
Are
on?
you? It sounds like you're on delay.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Wait, you talking about me?
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm sitting here like everybody's saying, they couldn't hear me. All righty. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay,
Wow.
Really? No, me.
you do sound like it.
Yeah, something's wrong with my internet. JMO, can you take over?
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Make sure you guys like the video if you haven't
Absolutely.
already. But I'm gonna ask you this, Jeremy. I'm sure you've been asked this before, and you don't necessarily have to give it a grade. But considering, I'll make it a two-part. Considering what we needed going into the draft, what do you think of this Lions draft class? Considering what you felt like we needed to make the team better to maximize what we can do.
Yeah, honestly, I thought they did a pretty good job addressing needs. You never want to draft completely for needs. You always want to have kind of one eye on the future when you're drafting. So just filling your immediate needs. I mean, you also have to consider these are rookies. Like outside of your first and second round pick, you're not probably getting top tier starters right away. So I think they filled their biggest need at corner right away. Running back, I didn't think was the team's biggest need, and I don't really like the value of running back that high. But I understand it. And then when you look at the rest, they got an edge rusher out of Julian Okwara, which I think was maybe their best draft pick. You get two guards. I think guard is a good value in the third round. You could potentially get a starter there, and then you followed up with maybe a future guy in Logan Stenberg, and then you kind of go further down. You get your interior defender, maybe a little later than I would have liked in John Pennicini, and then you get some guys that could develop into something. You get a guy like Quinn Cephas, who could be a wide receiver for the future, but you don't need anything out of him this year because you got three top guys. That's good value in the fifth round. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the draft. That my biggest complaint really is the DeAndre Swift pick, and it's more to do with the position than the player. I just don't think running backs have, they don't have long futures in the NFL. They don't have long futures with the team that drafts them. You get DeAndre Swift, and I mean, he runs out his 4-year rookie contract. There's a pretty good chance he's not going to be with the Lions at the end of that. That's just based on the numbers of the position.
Say that. Jeremy, don't say that.
Jeremy, we got killed for saying exactly what you said.
Oh,
But you say it a bit better, as Luke said, because we were like the value for the pick wasn't right. But
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about John Pennicini. Do you
Sure.
think him and the other defensive tackle we got are just like placeholders, just practice squad guys, or do you actually think he has a chance of making it team?
I think Pennicini has a chance of making the team. I actually, over the weekend, I talked to his defensive coordinator. I'm gonna write something on it either this week or next week. He's really high on the guy. He's not physically what a top tier NFL nose tackle looks like. His teammate Lakey Fotu is definitely more of that size. But he's a mauler, and he's got a motor, and the things his defensive coordinator was telling me was just like, this guy is a guy who will buy in the second he walks in that building. He is 100% committed to football, 100% tries the most every single time he's out there. He was talking about how they have the technology during practice where everyone's got a chip in their shoulder pad or something, and they track how much each player runs on each down and each rep and everything. He was consistently ran the most out of anyone on the field. And you think about that. You think about cornerbacks. You think about safeties. The defensive tackle is the guy that's running all over the field. And that kind of shows you the kind of guy that he is. And I just know Lions coaches are going to fall in love with that. Like they fall in love with Jared Davis. Now, does he have the talent to make the roster and become an immediate contributor? I'm not entirely sure. I think that's something he's going to have to work on. But I know the Lions coaches are going to fall in love with this guy for a while. And that means if he doesn't make the team outright, he's going to be on the practice squad all season. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him promoted at some point and get some playing time this year.
Well,
I want to see if people can hear me.
I hear you, Jim.
Yeah, I was just making sure people could hear me. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I
Go
follow
ahead,
on
Luke.
that?
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I just wanted to make sure you was back, but I want to follow on the question from this standpoint, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he makes the team. I think he goes to the practice squad right off the bat, which is crazy because it's not like me and you talk off of this show. We don't. I want people to understand that we're not having these conversations and then getting on here doing this. This is just train of thought. Okay, so my thing is this. You said something earlier about the idea of not always taking for need. And my belief is when you're picking in the top 5, you should never draft for need unless it's a quarterback. And if it's not a quarterback, then you should take the best talented player, especially if it still fits a need.
Yeah.
Do you feel that the Lions did that this year with their first pick at 3?
It's hard to say. I do think cornerback, I know there's been a lot of debate about it because it doesn't happen that often, taking a cornerback that high. I think in today's NFL, a cornerback is absolutely worth a top 3 pick. You just look at the way the league is becoming. There's 3 cornerback positions that are starters now because everyone is pretty much in nickel defense more often than not. And you look at the teams that are starting to take over this league, it's passing offenses. And the best way to stop that, okay, maybe a pass rush if there's a guy available. Unfortunately, Chase Young wasn't there anymore. The other best ways to get coverage is to make that quarterback hold on to the ball as long as possible. And, if what everyone says about Okudah is true, if he's truly the best cornerback to come out of Ohio State in decades, if he's better than Marshawn Lattimore, if he's better than Denzel Ward, then yeah, I do think the Lions did their job there in getting the best value they could out of the 3rd overall pick. You could argue quarterback is maybe a bigger need, but like you said, that's kind of a special position where if you have a guy like Matthew Stafford, you probably don't want to go draft a new guy and piss off Stafford like maybe some other teams in the division may have done.
I'm about to say Packers didn't get the memo.
Exactly.
They didn't get that. Hey Tim, I was trying to get you to ask a question before our internet went back crazy.
Okay, I was wondering who's out there that you would go ahead and take to make the Lions defense a lot more dominant, because I know that's where we're going to struggle at.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's kind of a unique offseason in that there's still actually kind of a lot of guys out there. I think a lot of people are talking about Mike Daniels. I just listened to an interview of Mike Daniels on Sirius XM, and I would say he came out of it not very optimistic that he's going to want to come back. He did compliment the locker room and said it was actually one of the best locker rooms he's seen in years, which I guess maybe speaks to the advancements that Matt Patricia has made in his couple of years in Detroit. But he also seemed to kind of non-directly complain about his playing time, which, was partly impacted by his own injuries, but it sounded like, he kept saying like, I can't control my snap counts. And so it sounds like he wasn't quite happy with the amount of playing time he got in Detroit. So I would kind of put him to the side. Marcel Darius is a guy that I'm thinking of because I'm kind of focusing here on defensive tackles because I feel like that's still where the team is the weakness. They obviously lost a lot of guys in Mike Daniels, Sean Robinson, and Damon Harrison, and I'm not really in love with the guys they replaced him with. They really need a pass rushing threat. And while Marcel Darius is kind of more of a run stuffer, he also has kind of a history of solid pass rush, maybe not the likes of, the best in the league, but they really need to get solid up front. And I think Marcel Darius is probably the best fit and the most likely to potentially come here. And so I'd say he's probably number 1 on my list.
All right, let's go with Nomas. Nomas, do you have another question for Jeremy?
Yes. What I would like to know is this. We heard several possible free agents that are still pending. I believe one is the linebacker Marquise Golden, but do you suspect that the Lions could make a move for another vet free agent that's still where he's young or like still like a little bit older or something? Depending on who he is, that position, do you think we'll make a signing there? Because we have Larry Walford as well, who's just got released by the Saints, former player of ours as we know him, and he was saying like he was willing to take $7 million or depending on the scenario, he might have to get a little more or something. Do you think the Lions pull a trigger on any of these type of players?
I do think they have some sort of move left. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a big move. Like I said, there are kind of an unordinary amount of talent still out there. Larry Warford, I don't see it happening. I think $7 million is a good price for some team to pay to get him. But if we're being truthful, his time in New Orleans, I don't think was necessarily as good as the Pro Bowl suggests it was. And plus the Lions have just gone out and addressed the guard position. I think they're fine with where they're at. They get Kenny Wiggins back. I know there probably aren't a huge amount of Kenny Wiggins fans in Detroit, and understandably so. But they draft two guys. I just think, if they're not going to pay $11 million from Graham Glasgow, I don't really understand the move to then draft two guards and then sign Larry Warford for $7 million. It doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. Whether Larry would want to come back or not, maybe. It's basically an entirely new coaching staff for him, so it's possible. But on Detroit's end, I don't think it makes a ton of sense based on their philosophies of what they've showed so far this offseason. Other guys, like I said, I like Marcel Darius a lot, but other than that, I don't really see any big name guys necessarily coming. I don't think the Lions are on Clowney as much as I know a ton of fans want to see. And I don't know. The only other real positions I'd be looking at are along that defensive line, and there really aren't a lot of good fits beyond Darius, in my opinion.
Okay, that's totally fine. J-Mo, your turn.
Well, on the same tack about the defensive line, that's one other thing that causes me not to sleep at night as a Lions fan and analyst, knowing what I'm in for next season. Because what do you think about them? Because I know Aquara is a good pick, but he's more of a jack linebacker than like a pure pass rusher. And I know we run a 3-4, but the way that Patricia's defenses is, they can be fluid and they can change. How do you feel about it? Because I feel like we didn't address the D-line enough. I think we should have at least another pass rusher and another defensive end. How do you feel about them not seemingly addressing that to bolster the defense? And besides Marcel Darius, is there anything we can do that will bolster us, and help us to, get some more wins in the win column? Because this front seven, because I'm not confident. I'm only confident in two linebackers, Tobias and Jamie Collins.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I'm not confident in any other linebackers, but this front seven is it's a lot of holes.
There are a lot of question marks. There's no doubt about it. I'm with you that it's one of my top concerns about the team right now. I do really like the Julian Okwara pick, because if you look at what really ailed this team last year, a lot of it, and I like the guy a lot. He's a great player. He's a great human being. But if you look back on it, I really think Devon Kennard kind of had a lot of problems with why the Lions weren't generating any pass rush. You look at some of the pass rush efficiency stats. Trey Flowers was eating a bunch of double teams and still getting an okay amount of production. I would say a solid amount of production given the amount of double teams he saw. Devon Kennard was never getting double teams ever. And he just never got any pressure too. I know the sack numbers look good, but in terms of consistent pressure, he was not getting it there. He wasn't. And I think Okwara takes over that spot, and we've seen him be a much better pass rusher at Notre Dame. Now, can he translate that to the NFL right away? We'll see. The other issue, I think, is in the interior, and the Lions basically got no pass rush from the interior last year. No Deshaun Hand really hurt them. Having him back, I think, is maybe one reason. If you're looking for reasons to be optimistic, having him back will provide a little bit more pass rush, assuming he stays healthy. But in terms of the guys they added, man, I'd like to say that
Austin Bryant, did we not draft him last year? Did he on the team anymore?
He is. But yeah, I think the reason why I keep saying I'm looking for an interior defender, some sort of defensive tackle that can rush the passer, is because I don't like the guys that they added. You look at, I'm drawing blanks on their names right now, but one is
Nick Williams and Danny Shelton.
There you go. Nick Williams is a one-hit wonder. He had one good year and he's 30 years old. And Danny Shelton's fine, but again, not really a great pass rusher. he'll take over the nose tackle position and be fine at it, but he'll basically be like a lesser Damon Harrison. So I'm not a huge fan of that crew, and I think Deshaun Hand is really going to have to carry the load there on the interior. And if we don't see him like take a big step and play all 16 games, and we could kind of be in a similar situation where we're seeing quarterbacks just sit in the pocket there forever because nothing's coming up in the interior, and the guys on the edges are either double teamed or just overwhelmed with just having to win every single time because they're not getting the quarterback to move from their spot from the interior.
Yeah, but see, it's not just the interior. I don't think Okudah can live up to the bill as the other opposite pass rusher when we do run 4 linemen, and that's what I'm really concerned about.
I think that's a valid concern. My only response would be like, I don't think it's going to be completely on him. We know Matt Patricia likes to move his linebackers around and bring in pressure from those linebackers. And I know last couple of years, the Lions haven't blitzed much, but I think part of that is because they've had so many liabilities in that second level from the linebackers. They don't have a guy who could cover at all. So if you blitz Jared Davis, well, then who's dropping back to cover people? Is it Christian Jones? Because no one's excited about that.
No, I was talking more about Romeo.
No one's excited.
Right. Well, Romeo Okudah. Yeah, that's an issue.
He's like the only other pass rusher on the team.
Right. But I think now we're going to see them move those linebackers a little bit more because they have a guy like Jamie Collins who can not only rush the passer, but he can actually cover. And so I think they'll get a little more versatile. I think they'll throw around some looks that maybe we haven't seen in the first 2 years. Admittedly, this is all a very optimistic take on the front seven because, like you, I'm concerned. But I do think Jamie Collins is kind of the key that allows them to be at least a little more unpredictable, and unpredictability is good for pass rush.
All right, we're going to go to Luke for his next question. Or maybe not. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, thank goodness, because I don't know
I guess
anymore.
Luke has left the building.
That's
so
okay.
Go back to,
all right.
I'm here. I'm here. It would not unmute for the life. Technology, people. Technology. Here's my thing. I know we're going to talk about the defensive line. I know we're going to talk about a lot of the different acquisitions that we made, but I want to dive more into the position coaches. And the new coaches that we brought in. How much of an impact do you think they have on this team? I know that the one coach, I'm drawing a blank on his name, where he came from UCLA, he brings a bit of that power run game to him. But what do you see, or from what you know, how are they coming to this unfortunate, I would say, situation and going to have an impact for the team this year?
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of am intrigued by a lot of their new hires. You look at their new defensive coordinator, Corey Unlin. I just kind of wrote a big piece on him and where he comes from, what his philosophies are, why the Lions probably brought him in. He does have a former relationship with Matt Patricia. They stayed in New England. They basically slept in the same office together for 1 year. Yeah. But the interesting thing about him is that he has since kind of diverted from the Patriot way for the past 20 years or so. He spent time under Jack Del Rio in Jacksonville. He spent time in Denver under Jack Fox, or not Fox. Yeah, Fox. Basically, he's been to, he's just obviously in Philly under Jim Schwartz. So he's seen a whole bunch of different defenses. The question, and unfortunately I don't have the answer for you, is does any of that matter? Will he have any sort of creative control over this defense? My instincts tell me probably not, because this is Matt Patricia's defense, and we all know how Matt Patricia likes his philosophy, and I'm not saying he's necessarily stuck in his ways, but he knows what he wants out of this defense.
Yeah.
You look, they also replaced their special teams coordinator, which was kind of an interesting move considering special teams wasn't a huge deficiency last year, but they bring in a guy who has a pretty good track record under one of the best special teams coordinators there in Cincy. So I'm okay with that hire. I think the real interesting stuff is really on the offense, honestly. You bring in not a new offensive line coach, but one behind, basically, who's the assistant offensive line coach for a couple of years, Hank Fraley. He's a guy that definitely will have similarities to Davidson, who was there before, but is enough of his own person where we might see some differences. We definitely need to see some improvement on that offensive line, and given that they have basically 2 or 3 new starters, it's gonna a lot of load is gonna fall on him. And then you look around elsewhere. Sean Ryan is a quarterbacks coach. He's been around for a couple of years and is pretty well thought of. And then the strength and conditioning team. I think maybe that's the other key changes that the team made this offseason. Last year was a tough one for injuries, and it's kind of crude, I think, to put like, oh, the team was super injured, it must be the conditioning team's fault. That's not really fair to them. I don't think sometimes injuries just happen, but considering the offseason that we're having, considering that it's going to be on those coaches to keep tabs on all the guys as they work out away from the facility, their job is key right now. And I think maybe that's something that not a lot of people are talking about. The conditioning staff, a lot is on their shoulders right now to make sure that those guys, whenever we start playing games, those guys are ready. And it's not easy right now for those guys, not being able to see those guys face to face.
And also make sure they don't drop like flies.
Exactly. Yep.
Real. So, okay. Tim, you have another question for Jeremy.
Okay. How much confidence do you have in the regime? Let's say if we go ahead and keep Patricia and Quinn, let's say 2 years from now, do you think that they're actually taking us on the right path that we want to be on?
I'd say my confidence level right now is probably at a 2 or a 3 out of 10.
Okay.
But I mean, a lot can change this year, right? I mean, this is the key year. If they go out and play 10-6 ball, 11-5 ball, then yeah, I think there's a reason to believe that maybe all this talk about changing the culture and getting guys that are devoted to this game and aren't goofing around in the locker room and, all this kind of like strict authoritarian leadership by Matt Patricia, maybe it eventually is worth it. But the way I see it, Lions are just kind of being strict for no reason because they've driven out a lot of talent in this team who, yeah, maybe they like to goof around. Maybe they like to go on Twitter and Instagram and do a bunch of silly stuff. But when they were on the field, they were fine. When Glover Quinn was on the field, he was fine. When Darius Slay was on the field, he was fine. When Quandre Diggs was on the field, he was fine. And maybe they were poisoning the locker room. Maybe the rumors we hear and there are true. Maybe that's why the Lions could never get over the hump. Maybe that's why the Lions, even when they had good seasons, they would cap out at 10-6 in the first round exit in the playoffs. Maybe that's all true. I don't personally believe it, and I don't see necessarily the benefits of being kind of this strict. You need to be all in. You need to be serious. No ping pong in the locker room. None of this stuff. Because it hasn't shown any results. I mean, we see it work both ways in the NFL. We see the Seahawks. We see them shooting hoops in team meetings. We see them having all sorts of fun. You see Ezekiel Ansah having a blast there during meetings, and that team consistently wins. And you see these Patriots castoffs be strict like hell against their team, against their players, and it doesn't come to mean anything. Now, that doesn't say that style doesn't work. We see it work in other places. It's starting to work in Tennessee. Obviously worked for New England for a really long time. But I feel like the amount of time that it's taken now to overhaul this culture, to change things completely, we need to see the results right now. And if I don't see them by, I was going to say October, but we don't even know if games are going to be played by October. If we don't see it by halfway through the season, then yeah, it's time to start talking about moving on.
So I have a follow-up question to that.
I was about to say I got a follow-up too.
Yeah,
me too.
I asked this before, and I want you to tell me, since you're kind of an insider on this whole thing, what does Matt Patricia do well? What is his calling card? What's the thing that when you see him, you think of what?
I think he's a technician, honestly. Like, I think in terms of technique, in terms of strategy, I think he's actually very sound. If you sit down and just talk with him about football, he'll talk your ear out, and you'll see the kind of that like engineer brain that he has, like go to work. One thing he started doing this year is every Thursday before practice, he pulled up in his four-wheeler and just talked to the media off the record for 10, 15 minutes during practice. And there we would just kind of talk about football, and you really kind of get an appreciation for what he knows about the game, what he knows about strategy, what he knows about analytics. And I think he's a very smart football mind. I really, truly believe that. My question with him is really just about leadership. And maybe that's just something he needed to learn on the fly. Maybe that's not something that was a big part of his responsibilities as a defensive coordinator for New England. Maybe it's just something that you had to be before you kind of learned it. But he's just a really smart guy. And if he can somehow, combine that with leadership qualities where he's not rubbing people the wrong way, he's not necessarily ruling based on fear. That's something that I keep hearing is they feel like he ruled based on fear. If he's more of a companion than a dictator, then I think he could have the thing to be a good NFL coach. It's just right now you have to be both, and right now he's only kind of half of the equation there.
This sounds good. We're going to go to JMO because I know JMO had another follow-up.
Yeah, when you were basically in short, you were saying basically the Lions have to do something this year for you to be satisfied with Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
My thing was, what is that something? Is that going 9-7 and losing in the wild card? Is that winning the division? Is that going 10-6 and losing in a wild card? What is it that he has to achieve for you to feel like that he's validated everything that he's trying to build here in this season?
That's a really good question, and I'd love to say like it. I feel like I can't just do the it has to be a playoff win or above. I feel like if I'm setting the bar, it has to be at least 9-7. Doesn't necessarily have to be playoffs. It's all about context though, right? Like if this team is 9-7, but they blew out all 9 teams and they had bad luck on the 7 games, well then maybe I'm a little more forgiving. Or if a couple officials ruin a couple more games this year, maybe I'll as usual. Maybe we should just kind of bake that into the equation every year.
No, we always bake that into an equation. 2 games a year, we're gonna get screwed over and lose.
But yeah, what happens if Stafford gets injured week 1? Like, do we forgive him completely? I don't know. It's hard to say. The one thing, if we're putting records and playoffs aside, the one thing I need to really, really see is defensive improvement. I need to see this be at least an average defense because we blew this defense up. 2004 isn't that far in the rearview mirror when this team had one of the best defenses in the league. Now it's nothing. They blew it up. They sent away some of the best players. They got in all of the guys that he likes. This defense, I don't care about injuries anymore. I don't care about, scheme fits and draft picks and rookies not developing. Like he's had 3 years to help build this roster right now. And so if this defense isn't at least average this year, then he's gone. Like even if Matthew Stafford carries this team to 8-8 and if the defense is still garbage, that's not good enough. We've given him plenty of time. Right. And so 8-8 would to me be the absolute cutoff.
8-8 is your bar or is it 9-7?
I guess 9-7. If we have to put a record on it, 9-7. I just need this team. The city needs a winning season again. And I know if that happens, I know exactly what will happen if this team goes 9-7. Detroit fans will be mad. They won't think it's good enough. They'll bring up the Bob Quinn quote from 3 years ago that said 9-7 isn't good enough. We fired Jim Caldwell for 2 9-7s. So why aren't we firing Patricia for 9-7? And they wouldn't be wrong in that criticism, but at the same time, at least there's an upward trajectory here, right? So if this team goes 9-7, I think I'd be willing to stick around for one more year.
That's good. And Nomis, I know you had another question as well.
Yes. To kind of piggyback off that, let's say the Lions are just destined to go 5-11, which I know a lot of y'all feel is true. And let's say Patricia is destined to be fired after this year. My thing is, and I know this may sound a little unfair, but do we necessarily have to get rid of Bob Quinn too? Because I understand that, yeah, he banked a lot in on Matt Patricia, those two being buddies, come from the same organization, everything and stuff like that. That based off the whole 9-7 isn't good enough. At the end of the day, the way I look at it is that he's the GM, and the GM has a lot of work to do. But I just want to try and get your personal opinion about that. Like, do you think it's the right call to get rid of Bob Quinn if they do have to fire Matt Patricia?
I think that's a really good question too. I think a lot of people assume that they're tied at the hip, kind of, and if one goes, the other one goes because they signed contracts at the same length and all that, and they certainly come from similar backgrounds and all that. If I were the owner, I would say they both probably have to go, though. You listen to the way Bob Quinn talks and the way he talked when he finally started drafting for Matt Patricia instead of Caldwell. He said something to the effect of, now I finally feel comfortable drafting again. Like I feel much more comfortable drafting for Matt Patricia and his vision than I did Jim Caldwell. And that's understandable because obviously they both come from the Patriot way and all that. So if one is gone, if that Patriot way is gone, well, what's the plan then? Are they just going to bring in another former Patriots guy to come in and fill his shoes? Because if not, then we're talking about Bob Quinn being kind of out of that comfort zone again. And I mean, if we're being honest, I don't think Bob Quinn has been bad at drafting, but he hasn't been great at free agency. And if you look at the talent on this team right now we're in year 5 of Bob Quinn, and you look at this roster and there's no standout talent outside of, I would say, Matthew Stafford and Kenny Golladay. There's no guys that and he didn't even draft Matthew Stafford. So
I like Tracy Walker.
I like Tracy Walker too, but I mean, I'm talking like elite all pro talent. He's had, I mean, he's drafted twice in the top 10 now. He could be. But he's drafted.
It's not a lot. I mean, you start researching players right now. So
exactly.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
And he's been good in the mid rounds of draft. He's been terrible in second rounds. He's been just kind of okay in first rounds. He hasn't really hit on any superstars in the first round. And part of that's understandable because most of the time he's drafting kind of in the mid 20s. You don't get a ton of talent down there, although sometimes you do. Ragnow is a good example I see from your chat. Kind of a talented player, but not necessarily an all pro yet. But you know, you have to look at some of the mistakes too. The fact that this team hasn't been able to get a pass rusher that's consistent until maybe Trey Flowers. The fact that we're in year 35 of rebuilding this offensive line and we still don't have a working 5. The fact that the tight end position has been a mess since Ebron, maybe even during Ebron, you could argue. You know, there just hasn't been a lot of consistency with this roster and a lot of success stories outside of, I don't know. I mean, what are the success stories about this roster under Bob Quinn? I don't see a ton, honestly.
No, because he drafted Glasgow and then said bye.
Right.
Yeah, and he's done that with some players. You know, it gives Diggs an extension, then shows him the door. And I mean, there's just a bunch of things that he's done that I sincerely don't understand.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you this though, Jeremy. Do you think us as a fan base expect too much out of this team?
No,
I'm serious. I'm dead serious on when I say this, because I think the expectation every year is we're going to do so good. We're going to do so good. And then all of a sudden we don't do that good. And then we're back into this, or wait till the off season again type thing. Do you think we see our players through rose colored glasses is what I'm asking.
Well, yeah, I think naturally we all do. We have to. I mean, as a Lions fan, if you don't have hope, there's no point in being in the game, right?
Well, apparently there is, because I've been in this for a while.
Right.
It's just to me, like, you have to have some sort of hope and some sort of expectation for this team, because let's be clear, this isn't the team from the 2000s. This isn't a bottom rung team. And I know it's hard to say from a team that just picked 3rd overall, but I don't believe that this team was a bottom 5 team last year. I think they got hit bad by the injury bug. They lose their all-star quarterback. This is an average team. This team has been an average team really since Matthew Stafford hit his stride in 2010 or 2011. And so it's not unrealistic. It's not too much expectations for the Lions to do what they need to do to take that extra step. And they haven't been able to. And so that's on coaches. That's on GMs. This team has a quarterback that makes their baseline, that makes their basement really a 6-10 team if everything else on their roster is horrible. I think Matthew Stafford's that good.
I do too.
And so the fact that the Lions haven't been able to get everything else together to get this team more than, they had the 1-11-5 season and that's it. And that's just unacceptable. So yeah, I think fans should have that expectation that they have the resources to get there. They just haven't had people in place necessary to get him there. And Lions fans should hold management, should hold coaches responsible and hold their feet to the fire and hold expectations high, because I mean, if not, then we're just kind of accepting that like this team is just always going to be 6-10, always going to be 5-11, always going to be picking in the top 10. And no one wants to do that now. Is this team right now, like, should you expect this set of players to go 11-5 and win the NFC North? I mean, obviously I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I mean, nothing wrong with hope, right? Like, why not?
I guess not.
See, I think for me, it's not even a matter of hope, Jeremy. It's not even a matter of, like, that's my standard. If this head coach is going to keep his job, he has to do something that has not been done before, and that means win the division. Okay, do something that hasn't been done before. Yeah. So if he wins 8 games, he should be fired. He wins 9 games, he should be fired. He wins 10 games, he should be fired, because I can't just look at the 10 games and just forget the other 9 that he did in the 2 seasons. So for me, I have a certain standard where I'm like, no, we as a fan base have to come to the table expecting more. Yeah. To me, the standard must be better than what it's been over the time. Right now, I feel like we have just been, we okay with what we get. And we go and we rant, and, oh, I hate this and I hate that. But to me, and I was having this conversation with J-Mo, and J-Mo was like, hey, man, your expectations are a little too high. You want them to go from 3-12-1 to a Super Bowl. And I said, yes. The Rams did it. They went from 4-12 to a Super Bowl. I'm just saying that it's not hope no more. Ain't no more hope. This is a standard that must now be part of the culture, because whether the fans know it or not, we dictate what's going to happen with this team. I believe Matt Millen said that he drafted half the players based off of the fans' love for him. We wanted Charles Rogers, he took him.
So you're saying we should go based off the fans? Is that an argument for the fans?
No, I'm saying the fans. What I'm saying is when the fans raise the bar, like for example, like if I make a potato chip company, and for some reason nobody's buying the chips, I got to change the formula. So you know, like it's a reason why other people are competing in different things like that, because there's a competition. There's other people that got it. But to me, our standards are too low. That's not hope. That's brokenness and settling. I'm not for the settling part. I think, to me, this team needs to win the division. Period. He's his third season.
That's fair. Win it. I mean, you could argue that the bar was raised the minute they fired Caldwell, right? 9-7 wasn't good enough. And so, yeah, I mean, at that point, Lions fans' expectation were raised. And yeah, it was raised well beyond what we're seeing right now. And I mean, the question is just, to me, how long are you willing to wait it out? How long are you willing to see if the experiment works? And I think you need to give every coach at least 3 years. I know there are some teams that don't operate that way. There are some teams that will do one and done. I think that's crazy, especially considering all the crazy luck things that happen in one season that can affect your win-loss record. But I completely understand your point of view, and I don't necessarily disagree. Like, time's up. Like, if you were talking about raising the bar past 9-7, then you got to raise the bar, and you got to do it now, because we're deep into your era at this point. You've been given a rope longer than a lot of NFL coaches, and so yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from.
I just looked at it and I'm like, to me, when he said that 9-7 isn't good enough, that to me, that should be the mantra of this team. And when I looked at this draft and I looked at the things that pertains to what we done, the first thing I jumped into was, did we do enough to win the division? That was the first thing I jumped into. And when I looked at the rest of the division, I'm like, if not this year, when?
Yeah.
I was about to say, look, I don't know if we did enough, but the Packers sure did enough to help us out. So,
right. And on top of that, Minnesota blew up majority of their defense. I don't even know who the starting cornerback is. I think it's Mackenzie Alexander at this point. I mean, but they got no Stephon Diggs, who was the bane of my existence. He was destroying us.
Yeah.
You ain't got to worry about him no more. They know Everson Griffin. If they bring him back, shame on them. I'm mad. But you don't have to worry about him or Linval Joseph. My thing is, this is the time now. And to me, that should be the standard. I don't want no more excuses. If he goes 9-7, and you added that's 18 games in 3 years. That's not good enough.
No.
Yeah, I
So-
think the standard is
awesome.
probably winning the division though, because I know us a lot of fans like me that the last thing I want to see us do is waste another Hall of Fame caliber player and then have them go to a different team and talk crap about us while they're winning, because that's apparently what they all love to do. And when you got a quarterback like Stafford, you how long are you gonna waste them? Because eventually we don't know if he doesn't re-up this contract and he decides, and the Patriots still don't got a quarterback and Bill Belichick calls him, what do you think he's gonna do? Like, he's not gonna stay here, and then we're stuck in purgatory for the next 10 years till we find another quarterback. And that hasn't happened only one time in 35 years. So it's just you have to find a way to build a football team that can win when you have a quarterback like this. Because I feel like if we had a Mitch Trubisky type quarterback, our expectation would be 5-11. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's the optimistic outlook.
right. Like, we wouldn't be expecting much, but we got Stafford, we got this offense, defense. All we need y'all to do is hold up y'all in, and maybe we'll be okay.
Yeah. And we got a defensive mind coach, which is Patricia. So
Yeah, they didn't work out. So how about you, Nomis? You got another question?
Yes. Okay. So everybody, we pretty much on the same page about the standard of the bar. My thing is, I want to ask you, who do you see Frank Ragnow actually taking a bigger jump this year, as far as the offensive line goes? Because we know that, like you said, for the last 5 years we've been building on this line. I know I like going about it, but it's just that I'm personally so sick and tired of this line not playing to the expectations we all hope. We tried so many different chemistries, and I know a lot of it has to sometimes do with the center. Do you think that he can make a jump big enough to help kind of take the release off the guards that we may be going with, or do you think that this will be another subpar year for the line based off what moves we made there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I do like Frank Ragnow a lot. I think he's going to look good again this year. The question is that chemistry thing you brought up, because right now we don't even know who the two starting guards are next to him, and chemistry is everything. So even if he's playing his head off, if he's not getting help from his guards, then it won't look good. And so is that going to be Joe Dahl on his left side and Jonah Jackson on his right side? That's what I'm guessing. But again, you're talking about a 5th round draft pick and a rookie right next to him, which is it's scary. It should scare Lions fans. I know the Lions went out and brought a bunch of guards back and drafted a couple, but it's still kind of a sketchy look to this offensive line, and maybe it finally all comes together. Maybe the Lions continue with the guard rotation, which I know should send shivers down everyone's spine. I wish I had the answer to your question. I don't really know. I think Ragnow is going to do everything he can. I think he's going to I wouldn't be surprised to see him take kind of a leadership role on that offensive line this year, now that he's in year 3, now that, as you mentioned, he's kind of that crucial center position. I know Taylor Decker was the center, or I'm sorry, was the captain last year, but I feel like it's starting to take over Ragnow's identity a little bit. I do feel like I've seen him get a little more bold and confident in the locker room. You kind of see him more on social media as well. I feel like he's finally comfortable, and he's a heck of a player. So, if we're talking just Ragnow, I have very high expectations for 2020. If we're talking the entire offensive line, not sure yet. Come back to me in 5 months.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, that's scary.
Hey,
Crystal ball
Jeremy,
ain't working.
do you think we're actually going to have a season?
Man, that's a loaded question too.
Isn't it?
I think the NFL is going to do everything in their they're going to pull out everything but the kitchen sink to make it happen. I'm very skeptical that fans will be a part of the 2020 season at this point. I don't expect it to happen. We just heard Gretchen Whitmer say on a radio show that she doesn't expect stadiums to be full by fall.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yep, fall is a couple months away. So I'd be surprised at this point if there were fans in the stadium, but I'd be almost equally as surprised to hear the NFL couldn't make it work. I think the NFL is going to make something work. We're already starting to see some other leagues trying to come back. So I think the NFL will be a part of that. The question is just whether they can get their act together in time, because training camp is right around the corner. I know it doesn't seem like it's that close, but it's not that far away either. So I think they need to get they need things to break the right way in the next month or two, in terms of numbers, in terms of, the spread of the disease and all that. I think a season happens. I don't think fans are gonna be in the stadium though.
Okay.
I hope they're not.
Fair.
I think it's a good thing if they're not, because if the fans are not, and I know it creates the atmosphere, but if the fans are not in the stadiums, right? Like, just follow me for a minute. If the fans are not in the stadium, that gives us a better chance of football. It's a controlled environment.
Yeah.
The minute you start letting fans in there, the environment has been compromised. And I'm telling you right now, if I gotta go through the winter without no football, I'm not gonna make it. Okay, it's gonna be stressful. And it's not gonna help my well-being. So I'm okay with that. But I do want to ask you this question, because we always talk about the Detroit Lions, the coach staff. We've touched on the idea of a season. We've touched on the off season. But the thing that I'm trying to figure out is at what point, like realistically, at what point do you see us going back into free agency to address the rest of the holes that we have on defense? Because we still got problems at linebacker and we still got problems at D-line. And I know some people want to know, are we going to go after Jadeveon Clowney, a guy who I don't think fits scheme-wise? But a guy like Marcus Golden does. So do you see, or are you hearing anything where we are undone with our work in free agency?
I wouldn't say the Lions are done. I do think they're somewhat happy with the guys that they got at this point. I definitely think defensive line is a position you can look to maybe add some guys. I think Marcus Golden is maybe the one guy I left out before that could be a fit with the Lions. I think we've seen the Lions take guys from that Giants defense and slot them right in there, and they do a fairly good job over here. The one thing about Golden, and this is kind of getting ticky-tacky and nitpicky here, his arm length is shorter than what the Lions typically like out of their pass rushers. They really like their guys to win with their arms and their physicalness rather than their speed. I'd say Marcus Golden is more of a speed guy, but everything else kind of fits what they're trying to do. And my only issue is that he kind of takes over that jack linebacker role that you're expecting either Austin Bryant or Julian Okudah to take. So he becomes a little redundant, but if you can get him at a good price, like, what's the issue in having too many good pass rushers, right? Like, you want that. That's right. A good problem to have. So I think he's a possibility. I just think you're going to have to kind of play the waiting game with a lot of these guys, not only because we can't bring them into the facility to get those physicals and see where they're like physically, but there's just no rush to do it right now because there's not a lot going on. You're basically just having virtual classrooms happen right now, and you can catch up on that sort of thing pretty easily. And we tend to see this sort of thing. Like, you also have to consider the Lions could add some key pieces after the first round of cuts. Basically, they do that every year. J.D. McKissick was a guy that played at least a somewhat important role last year that the Lions didn't get until after roster cuts. So don't look at necessarily the roster that they have right now and assume that's the one they're going to be going into week one with. Mike Daniels is obviously another big example of someone they landed really late in the process. Sometimes guys just get released late when there's more shuffling of the roster. And I don't see anyone on the free agent market right now that I think the Lions are going to grab and immediately changes the look of their defense. There just isn't the talent or the fits, in my opinion, but that's not to say that they aren't going to grab a contributor from now until week one. I think they do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the reasons why we're not spending the money, because I think they're trying to wait till everybody else cut down to that 53-man roster, and then let me pillage there and pillage right there. But I just got one more question, because I've been thinking about this, and I've been telling people this, that I believe that no matter what happens this season, I don't care what the record is, what happens. I think they give Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn another year just simply because of COVID-19. Do you get that same sense, or do you feel like no matter what happens, if it don't go well, they're fired?
I think if it doesn't go well, they can't use that excuse, because every team has that excuse. Every team is behind the 8 ball there. If anything, the Lions got a big advantage for being able to go to the Senior Bowl. That really cut down on their draft process work. Having basically done all the homework they needed to do on every senior in that draft class. So yeah, no, I don't think. I mean, if I'm the owner and I'm running the team, that excuse isn't holding water for anybody. Everyone has to deal with shortened off season. Everyone has to deal with these virtual meetings instead of normal mini camps. If you can't get your team ready, that's on you, because everyone else is getting their team ready. Everyone else is making their team competitive. Everyone else is winning games. If you're not winning games, you can't use an excuse that all other 31 teams can use.
If you do buy the team, I just want you to remember Luke. I don't care what position you give me. You just need to put me in the building with you. You won't go wrong. You just won't go wrong.
All right.
Me too.
Well,
Me too.
we'll see. SB Nation is going to have to really bump up their salary if that's going to happen.
I understand. Trust me. I understand.
Maybe the fans should buy the team, huh?
There you go.
You forgot they
I don't know,
tried that in
like
2015.
Green Bay. We gonna stop getting free agents then.
Good luck trying to get us all to agree on anything.
Like, everybody, I need y'all to put $100 in this month so we can get Jadeveon Clowney. And people are like, I ain't putting no $100 in for no Jadeveon.
You know what's funny though? On Twitter, I had somebody ask me that question, and they was talking about the Jadeveon Clowney, and it was like, hey, for that kind of money, we could have got Jadeveon Clowney. And I said, you own something that's very possible. So I just wanted to see from a 1-year spread, and I just looked at the 1-year spread for Jadeveon Clowney versus like Trey Flowers, and it literally, Trey Flowers still came out on top because he had 21 quarterback hits to Jadeveon Clowney's 13. He had 8 tackles for a loss. Jadeveon Clowney had 7. He had 7 sacks. Jadeveon Clowney had 3. He had 2 forced fumbles. Jadeveon Clowney had 4. And Jadeveon Clowney played 2 less games than him, but still had 31 total tackles compared to the 51 tackles that Trey Flowers had. And I was like, they basically the same thing in how this system looks if you're looking from just a 1-year sample size. So I think it's one of the things where I know that we want the name, and I know that a lot of us are still ailing. I 100% agree with Jeremy when he talked about the idea of taking a D lineman so late. Because I thought what the Dallas Cowboys did is what we should have did. Take the talent. The Dallas Cowboys didn't need no receiver. They took one. They really didn't even have a reason to add Bradley Anae, who we don't know if it's going to be good or not, but they still took a flyer on him because it was late and it didn't matter. They took a Neville Gallimore because if you look at their D line, and people forget, Dallas brought in Gerald McCoy, Dontari Poe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting the other big dude's name. It's gonna come to me in a minute. But they still went out and drafted those talents. So I wanted to do the same thing. So before we start jumping down the throats on who we did not get and things like that, let's look at what happened. Although I'm with Jeremy, because now he's a 2 out of a 10. I'm with him. So y'all can't.
Yeah, I had another question though. I had another question because look, I'm gonna be honest. Me and Lucas discussed this. I'm not really that confident in the defense, but I do think they will be improved. But to me, I think the key to the whole team has been, hey man, whatever. I don't care. The key to the whole team, an improvement is an improvement. It's like no. They improved one spot, I would be killing them. But I think that the whole key to this team attempting, I'm saying in quotation marks, attempting to be the team that we want them to be is honestly, to me, running the football, because I feel like if we run the football, our entire team will be better. I mean, you look at Green Bay last year, one of the worst 13-3 teams that I've ever seen, and I'm not saying that because I'm a Lions fan, but they ran the ball a lot. Aaron Jones had like 14 touchdowns or some crazy number. I can't remember. And, they were able to win games. To me, I'm just thinking about what Darrell Bevell has done in his second year. And in every second year, he's had a big jump in the running game. And looking at all of the pieces, we got the O-line. I know we're not sure about it, but looking at the O-line in Swift and Vitae, I'm just wondering, do you think that our running game will be good enough to help the team win more football games this year? And actually, we can run the ball out instead of giving it back to our defense so they can lose the game, because that's what happened last year a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I was going to bring up. Like you put a good running team on that team last year. How many times did we see the stat that the Lions held the lead in the fourth quarter in like 10 of the first 10 games or something crazy like that? Well, the difference there is they couldn't run out the clock. They always had like one third down play that didn't go the way that they needed to because they didn't have a running game. They couldn't run out the clock. They had to give it back to their defense one more time. And we saw what happened against Kansas City. We saw what happened against Green Bay. The defense couldn't get that one last stop. So the best way to fix that, well, maybe it's fix your defense, but also getting a running game is a really good way to fix that and mitigate the damage. Just keep the ball out of the opposing quarterback's hands. And will it work this year? I don't know. I wish I could confidently say DeAndre Swift was that missing piece and now they're going to be great. My issue is that I think running games are generally dependent on your offensive line. And I just can't tell you if this offensive line is going to work because there's too many moving parts. There's too many new pieces. Halapoulivaati Vaitai, great run blocker. That's the good news, but very unproven pass blocker. You look at Joe Dahl last year, and he was okay. Maybe better as a run blocker than a pass blocker, but just kind of okay. And then we talked about Ragnow. I'm fine with Ragnow. I'm fine with Decker, but then you're potentially starting a rookie at right guard, and so there's too many moving pieces for me to say like, yep, it's all going to click. We're great. I do like the threats that they have in the backfield, but they're only as good as their offensive line, and that's just it's one of the biggest question marks on the team right now. And
we're looking at the coordinator and what he's been able to do in the second year and the talent that we added. Are you at least more optimistic about it than last year? I'm just asking for the fans that I know want to hear this, because we have our own opinions, but people really think Swift is going to be rookie of the year and he's going to be a top 10 running back. So, I'm just trying to see if there's any way.
Well, the one thing I will say is that I do think Darrell Bevell has the offensive line that's closer to what he wanted, because Halapoulivaati Vaitai is more of a run blocker than what was the right tackle's name before? Wagner, thank you, Rick Wagner. More than Rick Wagner was, and now he has a guard that he likes and a good center. So I think there are reasons to believe that second year jump could happen. I'll just go and say it though, like Darrell Bevell was the coaching MVP last year. Like he did a heck of a job in the first 8 games with Matthew Stafford. And I mean, you look back to like the Jeff Driscoll games, like he put a heck of a game out there for a guy that was coming off the bench, didn't know he was playing until 2 days before the game, wasn't practicing all week. And I mean, I really think I'm very high on Darrell Bevell, and whether he has a running game or not, I think we're going to see this team put up a lot of points. We saw them kind of unleash Matthew Stafford again last year. There were a lot of deep balls, and that's the reason why Kenny Golladay was the guy that he was last year. Does it come together on the ground? Again, I can't say I feel strongly one way or the other. If I'm leaning one way, I'm going to lean the way of what we've seen out of the Lions running game for the past 20 years. And like, I'm sorry, it's not Barry Sanders back there anymore.
It's true.
I just, it would be, I wouldn't say it's a miracle if the offensive line comes together in its first year with all these new pieces, but it would be mildly surprising to me. So I think the running game isn't going to be amazing. Anyone who's predicting DeAndre Swift to get 1,200 rushing yards in his rookie season, I think you need to pump the brakes a little bit. But that being said, I'm really not that worried about the offense overall, because they have so many weapons in the passing game, and we've seen Bevell, really scheme up some interesting plays and successful plays. And as long as Matthew Stafford's healthy, I'm thinking this is going to be a top 10 offense.
Right,
Yeah,
no doubt.
I'm hoping so.
You can't beat that. I mean,
they definitely be a top 10 offense. That's a no-brainer.
It's just the defense is the concern, and I think that's what most of our concerns should be. The defense is what the problem is. It's one of the reasons why I've been so critical of our head coach, because I'm trying to figure out how you're supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, but the defense can't stop a nosebleed. So, but I do want to know this from the perspective of the Lions from this. When it comes to the schedule, Clearly they didn't do us no favors. I don't know how they keep coming up with these schedules, but they didn't do us no favors. What is the one game in that schedule that you feel is like this is an absolute trap game that the Lions should win, but they probably lose?
Ooh. Well, I'm kind of scared of that Arizona game. Like, I don't want to disrespect Arizona at all.
God. Thank you. Why, get out my head, Jeremy. Get out my head.
Now, Arizona's going to be a much better team than they were last year. I think we saw flashes of what they could be last year, especially towards the end of the season. Plus, just playing at Arizona seems to really, for whatever reason, be tough for this Lions team. Maybe it's the West Coast travel. Maybe it's the humidity or the heat in Arizona. Maybe it's, I don't know, just
the coach.
Maybe it's the coach. Maybe whatever. But yeah, if anyone is just like penciling like, oh, Cardinals, they were horrible last year, that's a dub. Like, no, that they're not going to be the same team they were last year. They had a pretty good offseason. They got DeAndre Hopkins now. So I mean, that's going to be
Isaiah Simmons. Don't forget that.
I know you love your boy Isaiah Simmons over there too.
You know what that was though. And this is another thing I noticed with the Arizona Cardinals. Their general manager said that he was praying that Isaiah Simmons slipped to him, but he thought that it was no chance it was going to happen. And when it happened, he said, this is a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. And he said the reason he got him is because when he looked at his team last year, all the teams who gave them fits did it with what? The tight end. And that first game with the Detroit Lions, what killed the Cardinals? The tight end.
True.
How do you do that now when you got this guy who can run with him?
It's a good question. And that'll be, I think, that's going to be a matchup that the Lions fans are going to be watching very, very closely.
I will.
Yeah, I don't think any Lions fan is penciling. I mean, I think we'll win the game, but nobody penciling that in because they got DeAndre Hopkins. We know that changes everything.
Absolutely.
So,
I didn't even mark it. I didn't even mark it. I gave it a loss. I didn't even.
Yeah, I know you gave it a loss. I already know what you had it as. See, my trap game would have been Carolina just because I've had running back nightmares with a guy like Christian McCaffrey, but we'll see what happens. But I wanted to ask, was there any move that you were very happy that the Lions did this year, and a move that you were very questioning, like why did they do that?
Oh yeah, definitely had at least one of each. I'd say the most underrated move that I really liked was the trade for Duron Harmon. Getting that coverage safety could really change the way this defense looks on the back end. I think it's going to make Tracy Walker a better player because they can basically use him wherever the heck they want to now. They can make him a matchup nightmare against tight ends. I think Tracy Walker could line up against some of the best tight ends in this league, and having someone that can actually like be that deep guy that no one's going to get by now in Duron Harmon, they can do that because, I mean, as much as I like Quandre Diggs, he wasn't a great coverage guy. As much as I like Tavon Wilson as well, also not a great coverage guy. He's more of an in-the-box safety. Now they got someone who can be back there and be reliable.
You like Tavon Wilson?
What?
Did you say you like Tavon Wilson?
I like Tavon Wilson.
Like the person, though, right?
Oh, my God.
He was started something.
No.
Listen, I want to make sure I heard Jeremy right. Okay, we this love affair been happening for a while now. I just want to know I heard him right. You mean like the person, like he's a good guy, not the player, right?
Well, a little bit of both. Listen, he's good as a box defender. You don't want him lined up in man-to-man coverage. You probably don't want him as a deep safety either because I
don't want him in the box. Did you not see what Jamal Williams did to him? He didn't even want no part. I don't even think he wanted to smell Jamal Williams. He was like, "Nah, I'm good.
I don't know, man.
Hey, listen, I'm not going to joke. I still love you, Jeremy. I just had to throw that in there. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I didn't know I landed on a landmine there, but
you did. The Duron Harmon signing surprised me, and I feel like we stole him.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Basically cost him nothing.
Yeah, the way I feel about Duron Harmon is kind of like I felt about Coleman last year.
True. That's scary that you're bringing up that example, but yeah. It did kind of feel like that kind of key piece. In terms of a move that I wasn't too thrilled with, it was probably the Nick Williams signing, honestly. I keep going back to that interior defensive line. I just
love again. Yes.
I mean, the 30-year-old guy with one good season to his name who was basically out of the NFL 2 or 3 years ago. And basically expecting him to be your pass rush guy from the interior. That's a bold strategy. It's a bold strategy. We'll see if it plays out well. But I think that's another thing that you can really kind of hammer Bob Quinn on is the interior of that defensive line has not really been good. I think last year was the best it looked on paper, and then the results never showed up to what we thought Mike Daniels was capable of, what we thought Snacks Harrison was capable of, what we thought Deshaun Hand was capable of. And so, I think we're going to have another year of just like subpar talent there. And I don't understand the Nick Williams move. I don't understand being more aggressive in the defensive tackle market in general, whether it meant, trying to mend fences with Snacks, which probably wasn't going to happen, or I don't know, going out and just getting someone on. There were big guys available.
Are you okay with the Chase Daniels and Danny Amendola moves?
I'm okay with Chase Daniel mostly because I don't care about backup quarterback that much. I'm of the belief
that much though.
I mean, it's if you look at it comparatively speaking, this year he's pretty much middle of the pack. And you look at some of the guys that are getting paid more than him in terms of backups. I mean, it's just something that teams do. And I don't personally believe it because I'm definitely of the belief that, if your starting quarterback is gone, you can pretty much kiss the season goodbye. And I know everyone will bring up the Eagles example, but that's an exception, not the rule. More teams, if you're losing your starting quarterback, look at look what happened to the Steelers last year. Look what happened to the Lions last year. You're pretty much done if your starting quarterback is out long term. So no, I'm not a huge fan of paying Chase Daniels that much money, but it's really not that out of the ordinary where I'm like, you shouldn't have done that.
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
It was about the back to the defensive line. I know this is a real unorthodox question, and I know it because it's like I try my best to focus on production versus the name, as we always say. But what was your opinion of Kevin Strong last year when he did get a chance to play? Because he did go down with injury.
Yeah, I kind of like what Kevin Strong showed. I mean, I know the Lions like him a lot, and I think I still just kind of feel like he's more of a long-term project. I think he can be kind of a rotational guy where you're giving him like somewhere between 10 to 15% of snaps. But I still think it's more of a long-term thing with him. And I mean, if he can take a big year 1 to year 2 jump, like the Lions are going to be thrilled with something like that. I'm not really expecting a ton out of him. I'm not really expecting him necessarily to be the backup nose or a guy that really commands 30 to 40% of snaps, but it's within the realm of possibilities. I think he showed enough that the Lions are going to at least want to keep him around on the practice squad. If not, maybe that kind of small 10 to 15% role.
So do you think, Jeremy, I've got a question for you. In the offseason, we went with Big V, but there was another right tackle out there in Jack Conklin. And I think he's a Michigan product. He's went to Michigan State. I just think that made so much more sense for me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely see that. The price obviously would have been a little bit higher for a guy like him. He signed for 3 years, $42 million. So
yeah, but he's 26 and the talent is so much better.
No question. Yeah, you have to wonder if they got into a bidding war with him. I wouldn't be surprised if they went in for him. There's also a question about fit and what they were looking for. Like I said, they got Vaitai, I think, because of his run blocking skills, and I think that Conklin is definitely more of a pass blocker type. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about an all-pro guy. His rookie year, 8th overall pick. So definitely, if we're talking just pure talent, he's a more talented guy. I just don't know if the Lions were willing to spend that much money on the position. And I know they handed Vaitai a pretty hefty
contract. That's what you were saying, though. It's like we have no stars on this team.
Yeah.
And this is why.
Maybe. I mean, the thing is they've
Jim, you're funny. You're right.
I just think like
this is why.
My thing is, though, like you need to be getting those talents in the first place. You need to be drafting those talents. If you're getting them secondhand, like there's a reason the Titans let him go. I'm not entirely sure why it is, but there is a reason that they let him hit free agent market. If you're spending a ton of money on free agency, you're probably doing it because you failed at drafting. And I mean, we've seen the Lions throw a lot of money at right tackle. We saw them throw a bunch at at TJ Lang, and it didn't work out.
Right.
Now, like, the closest thing they've really done to any sort of move like that is Trey Flowers, and I would say the jury's still out on whether Trey Flowers was a good move to throw all that money on. And in general, I get the appeal from a fan standpoint, and there is some validity to throwing a lot of money in free agency, but at the same time, you're kind of getting a second tier of players when you're looking to free agency to build your team. You really have to do it through the draft. And so my biggest complaint about why this team doesn't have their superstars is really they're just not getting them in the draft. They're getting good players, just not great players.
Or they're not patient enough.
Or they're not patient enough. Yeah.
You know,
Van Noy.
Warford, Tomlinson, this guy's saying this right now. We drafted 2 Pro Bowl guards, Warford and Tomlinson.
Yeah.
And neither one of them stayed here.
True.
So, I mean, that's a problem. Tim, you had a question?
Yeah. Okay. Would anybody really object to if we did get rid of Patricia, keeping Darrell Bevel as our offensive coordinator?
Ooh, that's tough.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't have a problem with it. I think given the year that Matthew Stafford had last year, he would really love Darrell Bevel to stick around. That's an interesting question. And the guy has been around for 20, 30 years. He's basically seen success everywhere he's went. I would think it would be a mistake to let him go. But at the same time, it's going to be up to the next coach. It's going to be up to the next head coach. And so if the next head coach wants if they get an offensive minded head coach, I think there's a good chance Bevel doesn't stick around because it probably won't necessarily be in line with what he wants. But I mean, it's kind of an interesting situation. Matt Patricia kept Jim Bob Cooter around for a year and then kind of sent him packing. So I think you could see a situation like that play out where it's like, okay, Darrell Bevel, you've done enough to earn, an interim coaching job for a year under the new head coach.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't like what he sees, if you don't line up philosophically with me during this year, then you're probably gone after that first year. If you do, succeed and we like what you're doing, then you stick around.
One more from me here. I think that them going 8-8, like you said, could be a problem if we have one more playoff spot this year. And I think that's really going to affect the whole situation. What if we're 8-8, but we're say 8-7 at the end of the year? We're actually almost in a playoff spot because we have that wild card. Do you think, because the mandate is basically be in contention for the playoffs, not make the playoffs or win a division or anything like that. Do you think if we're 8-8 or God forbid we're 7-9 and we were still in the hunt at the end,
Right.
do you think they still keep these guys? At least Patricia in that scenario.
It's hard for me to say without seeing how they went 7-9 or how they went 8-8. If they're beating good teams along the way, if they're in contention every single week, then maybe I give a little more leeway. 7-9, it's going to be hard for me to really be in their corner though, because you need to take a significant step, and as much as bad as 3-12-1 was last year, I don't think moving 7-9 is really that significant of a step. I don't think it's a show of growth necessarily. I think it's just a show of, oh, hey, our quarterback was healthy all this year. That's all that is to me. So this team needs to actually make big strides enough to where they're not only competing and contending every single week, but they got to be winning the games. They just have to be closing this year. And so anything short of 9-7, I don't care how the league has changed. I don't care if you can slip into the playoffs now at 8-8 or even 9-7. You need to show some legitimate growth, and sneaking into playoff contention in December at 7-9 is just not enough.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm going to go with one more question from the entire panel, and then we're going to take questions from you guys. So get your questions ready. All the subscribers on there, we're going to get your questions in just a minute. Okay, J-Mo, we're going to go with you first.
Oh, all right, man. We went over a lot of things and a lot of position coaches, but obviously you don't really think we're going to be that good this year. You haven't given a record. You don't have us making the playoffs, and if we're not making the playoffs and winning the division, we're not going to be that good. So what do you think this team needs in order to be that good? Is it simple as Matthew Stafford playing like he did in 2016? or is it simple as Matt Patricia actually being a good head coach?
I think it's probably more the latter than the former. I mean, I just need to see Matt Patricia work this defensive mind, genius mind that I've seen flashes of, but not so much on the field. And so, yeah, I think it really starts and ends with the defense. That was the main issue last year. And if he has the players that he likes now and has the locker room as it looks like he's starting to gain favor with, he needs to show his magic. He needs to show his genius out there, and he needs to get this team, I would say, like borderline top 10 defense. Do I think they have the personnel to necessarily do that? I mean, no, I don't.
I mean, maybe if we were completely healthy the entire year, but that literally never happens.
Right, exactly. I'm very excited about the offense. I need to make that clear. I do think, even with the questions on the offensive line, this offense is going to be exciting this year. They have a ton of targets, both in the passing and in the running game. They have a bunch of skill position player, and I still think a borderline top 5 quarterback in this league. So I do think the offense is going to be exciting. I do think it's going to get them into games. And yeah, I mean, if this defense moves up to even average, does that mean that 11-5 is possible? 100%. I do think 10-6, 11-5 are within the realm of possibilities. I just think things have to kind of fall in the right place. The Lions need injury luck. They need ref luck. They need everything to seemingly click on defense all at once. But they could I could just as easily see them go 6-10. I really could. I really could see
the defense. We were talking about the things that they need. Of course, we have to be better defensively.
Yeah.
But my thing is, shouldn't we be at a point where we're putting ourselves in a position to win and not getting in our own way, which causes us to lose games? Because when I heard back to that Arizona game, I just don't know how you lose a game like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would have made sense if the game was close the whole time. But, I mean, Stafford was like, I can't have a lead for 3 minutes? Like, like he couldn't have a lead for 3 minutes. Like, and I think back to Matt Patricia, and I do think he has some advantages, but it has to be something on this team that clicks outside of the offense, because I think the offense is going to carry this team, and they can carry them as far as 10 wins, but it just depends on. But to me, that's not going to make me any happier. I'll be like, Matthew Stafford just carried you. I've seen him do it before with other coaches. So it's like, what spark on this team could it be? Is it a player? Is it Okudah? Like, who's going to be the spark on this team that just puts it all together, at least so we can be not 28th in defense?
The one thing I will say is that a lot of times I like to think about where my mindset was on this team last year at this time, and I know exactly where it was at. It was the Lions had just finished the 2018 season with a defensive string of like awesome games, right? Like Snacks was playing at that high level. The Lions' run defense was amazing. We were all thinking this defense could be really good in 2019. The questions are on offense. Like, who is this Darrell Bevel guy? What's he doing trying to take the ball out of Matthew Stafford's hand and run the ball 40 times a game? And then what happened? The complete opposite. The complete opposite. The offense was throwing the ball like crazy. Matthew Stafford was at his best. This team was putting up points. The defense collapsed. So the one thing I'll say is it looks like right now the offense is going to be amazing and the defense is going to be terrible still. Let's just wait it out. Expectations
you know what?
are
That's
never
exactly
reality.
what I said. I think we were on last night, and I said, whatever we think is going to be the best position group, that's going to be the worst.
Yeah,
whatever we
well
think is the worst is going to be the
Always
best.
happens.
It seems like it happens every year.
Yeah.
But let's go to Noma's. Your last question for Jeremy.
Okay. Well, first of all, I get into that, I guess I hope everything is going to be the worst, so it end up being the best. But anyway,
There you go.
but I got to ask you about the draft picks I had in with this. What was your overall grade for them?
I think overall I gave them, I don't know if I put out an official grade out there or something. I'd probably be in like the B minus, grade. I was definitely a big fan of the Okudah pick, big fan of the Julian Okwara pick. The guards, I thought that filled a position of need, but I'm not crazy about either guy. And then late round picks are just kind of, throwing a dart at a dartboard with a blindfold on. So I don't like to think too highly or too lowly of those picks. As I mentioned before, my really big, my big issue was running back that early in the draft. I like DeAndre Swift as a player. I think he's actually going to be a really good fit in this offense. It's just a value thing. I think the Lions' offensive line is too much of a question mark, that if you're drafting a running back, when you draft a running back, you expect them to perform right away. It's one of the positions where you can get value out right away. Year one, your running back is hitting the ground running. No pun intended. So in that sense, it was kind of like a win now move. Like we need this last offensive piece right now. I just don't know if the offensive line is in place for that to actually happen. Because I do think that you have to get that in order before you start spending all these resources on your running backs. So overall, I'm still happy that the Lions hit on their major needs. They got talented players. I think they got good value outside of that running back pick, basically with every other pick in the round. So I'm overall happy. I think the Okudah pick really kind of turned things around for me, because I was pretty bumming after the DeAndre Swift pick. Even though I like the Okudah pick, but getting Okudah was huge for me, because it's that pass rush guy that we've all been waiting for them to add early in the draft. And they got a guy who's arguably a second round talent. A lot of people think he was maybe a first round talent had he not broken his leg last year. So I'm high on that Okudah pick, and I think that elevates it to a B.
Okay, let's go to Luke for your last question. Are you here, Luke?
Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm just listening and enjoying every bit of it, because Jeremy don't know it yet, but we just think so much alike. It just
we best friends now.
I mean, like you Step Brothers, we just become best friends.
Yeah,
that happened. No, I mean, first let me just say thank you for coming on. I know that you are a busy person, and what you do is very busy. So I just want to let you know we do appreciate that. I think for my final question is not so much Lions related, but Lions related. How did you know when you was like in your heart of heart, like, I'm a Lions fan, I want to follow the Lions, this is my team, and I'm gonna make this a thing for me? How did you know that was gonna be it for you?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have season tickets at a really young age. My dad was a big fan.
Oh, really?
So we went all the time. I think when I really knew they had their claws into me, and that, like, okay, like yeah, no pun intended again, was when my whole family went, but when my sister dropped out, like, so we went from 4 tickets to 3 tickets. Like, I took that as like a personal attack. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're not going to the games anymore. This is who we are. This is what we do on Sundays. We don't go to church. We go to Lions games. What do you mean you're not going anymore? And that's when I was like, oh, this is like a sickness. Like, this is this is me. Like, I can't get rid of this now. Like, this is who I am. I might only be 7, 8 years old, but like, this is the rest of my life. I'm a Lions fan.
Oh, I got it too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is the COVID Scott Mitchell you'll never get away from.
Exactly.
Yeah, I listen. I realized I was a Lions fan when playing Little League. There was this little Pop Warner team, the Lions, and I was like, oh, okay, they got nice jerseys. And I did not want to play the game because I didn't want to beat them. That's when I was like, I'm definitely a fan. I did not want to beat the Lions. I was like, nope, don't want to beat them, don't want to play coach. She was like, wow, I don't want to beat the Lions. And he thought I was crazy. I was like, I don't want to do it. I'm gonna play for them one day. I don't want to do it. I don't want to beat them. That's what I knew. That's when I knew I was stuck. It was all bad. Yeah, I was stuck.
Why do we call it like a crisis type thing? I'm not sure why.
For me, it's not. It's a big pride in it. And to me, the thing that the Lions give me is an opportunity to figure out the puzzle. How do we make this thing better? You know what I mean?
That is a puzzle. Absolutely.
But see, it's not a puzzle. It's simple. But our franchise is so incompetent. Like, how many random teams do we have to see build a Super Bowl contender around their young quarterbacks for us to finally be like, we're done with this team? We got Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. We got Jimmy G just dropped on a team that's just a dominant football team in 2 years. Like, it's not that hard. Just put a run game and protect your quarterback and play average defense.
And
That's
for
not
me-
hard to do.
for
Green
me,
Bay
it was
did that
when,
last year and
for
went
me,
to the
it
end
was-
of the championship.
For me, it was when the Saints were turned it around, and they had paper bags on their head and called them the Aints.
Yeah,
And
right.
they won a Super Bowl. I was like, no.
But you got to realize how they turned it around. They had a great defense, especially in the defensive backs. And then,
Yep.
I mean, they had Drew Brees, but they had weapons, and they had what? Sean Payton, a coach, a mastermind, somebody who
how much
was
you-
innovative. You know,
All right.
that's the guy that
Let me
we
say
got.
this really quick because we don't want to keep them too long with the stories. I want to say this really quick. There's 65 people in the chat. We got 34 likes. Let's get those likes up. We are praying, fingers crossed, legs crossed, and eyes are crossed as well, hoping that Jeremy joins us again at some point in time to do this again. So make sure you show him the love by putting them likes up so he know that you here. And I'm pretty sure he's probably in there looking like, let's see who's here. So don't say nothing crazy. All right. Jim,
All
take
right.
it over.
Okay. Tim, one last question from you.
Okay. Well, as far as to really show that we're heading in a different direction, just having a good season this year is not good enough for me. We got to have a good season that will follow up the following year too.
Yeah.
Because so many years we have seen them get to a point, then the very next year, the very next season, they'll go ahead and take a nosedive down to the bottom. How do you feel about that?
I mean, no question. That's got to be the ultimate goal, and I think that's what the front office has been preaching. Right? Is like we're not trying to get that 1-11-5 season. We're trying to build a culture that's sustainable. That the Lions can join the ranks of the Steelers and the Packers and the Patriots, where this is just a good franchise. This is a team that can sustain long-term success, and to build long-term success, maybe it takes a long time. Maybe it takes a couple of years. That's what the Lions are selling. Now, whether you're buying it or not, I mean, largely, I'm sure depends on this season. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, is anyone going to be that excited if this team goes 10-6, loses in the first round of the playoffs, and then turns around and goes 6-10 next year? No, they're gonna. I mean, Matt Patricia will be right back there on the hot seat. Definitely in danger of getting fired. I think this team can't lose 10 games again, or Matt Patricia is fired. Period.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep.
All right. So now we're going to take your questions, and I have one. The first question is actually directed at Luke, but okay, we'll do that. Luke, if Bevel was here in
Quick answer,
Patricia's
yes.
first year,
Yes.
Quick answer, yes.
Yes, I think hands down that was one of the reasons that I held that to him. I said if Patricia coming in and he's supposed to get us over the hump, you start with your coordinators. There wasn't a coordinator from that Caldwell team that I thought we should have kept. And if you were going to do that, you didn't have a problem swapping out Terrell Austin for Paul Pasqualoni. You might as well not have stopped there. You should have moved JBC out and brought in another coordinator. So he didn't, and therefore I'm putting that on him. Yes, if we did have that, we probably would have made the playoffs.
Yep, I agree with you there. What do you think, Jeremy? It's
an interesting question. I think it's possible. I think we also have to remember though, like that defense was really bad at the start of the year. It turned itself around in the second half of the season when Snacks was there. But they managed to keep their head above water. So I feel like they probably would have won a couple more games down that stretch. Now, would they finish 6-10? So is that enough to get them to 8-8, 9-7, 10-6? I don't know. I think they probably just narrowly miss out on it, but we would also have probably seen them be even better at the start of 2019 had Bevel been around.
6 of those 10 losses came at a pathetic offensive performance. Like it was just saying they could have gotten 4 out of those 6. That gets you your 10 right there.
True.
Yep. I'm going to ask this question to you, Jeremy. We did talk about these questions before the show. Barring injuries, which would be worse, losing most of the first half games or the second half games to go 8-8?
I mean, I think
or does it matter?
Ultimately it shouldn't matter in my opinion, but I would say Lions fans would probably. Oh man, that's actually really hard. I was going to say Lions fans would hate it more. Lions fans would probably hate it more if they won to finish, like if they had that Caldwell year where they went 1-7 and then almost kind of made the playoffs. I think they finished 7-9 or something. But I think Lions fans would hate that more because they would want Patricia gone at 8-8, and understandably so. But with a strong finish, let's say a 6-2 finish or a 7-1 finish, people would be like, well, he turned the team around. Maybe they take that momentum into the next season and start out 7-1 instead of finish 7-1. But man, yeah, I think I would actually prefer that though, because I hate when I buy in only to be fooled. I hate it. I hate seeing the Lions like number 3 in power rankings 6 weeks into the season be like, this is it. It's finally like all the weight has finally been for this year. It's happening. And then for that to be taken away from me in the matter of a month before we even get to the playoffs.
2013.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Those years killed me more than just like the typical 3-13 years. I can handle 3-13. I've been through 0-16. What I still can't handle is the 7-1 start that don't end in some sort of postseason success. That kills me.
Was bad.
Blame it on the refs.
You can't. I don't know about that one. I mean, they factor in.
No, I'm talking about 2015 when we played the Packers. I don't want to talk about it.
Oh, yeah. I get you on that. I mean, it's every year when we play the Packers, really, pretty much. It says, I don't see OMG, it's Lions talk. And Michael, he says, I don't see why you dislike the running back in the second round. Everybody always says that if Stafford had a running game, and you can finish that by, he would, the Lions would be better and whatever. But I think we addressed this earlier, but I'm going to have you answer it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it would just go back to my point that I think running games are more dependent on the offensive line than your running back. You look at the way running backs are used in the league these days. They're just kind of passed around after a couple of years. If you're, we're talking high second round pick here. That's basically, that's almost a first round pick that you're spending on a guy that most likely won't be on this team in 4 years. You look at some of the best running backs in the league just a couple of years ago. Todd Gurley, where is he now?
Yeah,
that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Like the Rams had one good stretch, one good run with Todd Gurley, and he had a couple good years, but the team had one good run under Todd Gurley, and now he's gone. And so the shelf life is just too short for a running back. I think you can add one if you're a contender right away. A lot of people bring up that the Chiefs were the first one to draft a running back this year. Well, they can afford that luxury because they're already in championship mode. And if you're in championship mode, you can take a running back right away because they're going to give you production right away. Like I will concede, we're going to see a lot of DeAndre Swift. You're going to get a lot of production out of your running back in your rookie year, but the Lions weren't in a position, in my opinion, to make a luxury pick like that because they needed help elsewhere. They needed help on defense, and getting a production from a running back in your rookie season is something a championship team does. And I just don't see the Lions as a championship team right now.
So
can I add
hold on, guys. We're talking over each other. No, let's go ahead for a minute, then we'll go to JMO.
Okay. So, where do I want to go with this question?
I thought you had something you were trying to say, so I want to make sure you had a chance to say it.
Oh, no.
Okay, JMO, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, JMO.
No, I was just gonna say my thing with the running back pick was, I'm gonna be honest with you. Maybe I wasn't looking at draft boards right. You can blame me, but I didn't know DeAndre Swift was the best running back in the draft until draft night because I was leaning more towards Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor. I just think the gap in the running backs were so close that if you were so sure you wanted a running back, you trade back in the second round, get more picks, and then you take J.K. Dobbins. Of course, you'd be like, well, we want our guy. But to me, the gap level in running backs it just wasn't that high as like if Ezekiel Elliott or Saquon Barkley or somebody is coming out like that. So if you want to take a luxury pick that bad, at least get more assets, especially when, it was basically a first round pick. And I just really thought we were going to go O-line or defensive end.
And then Luke wanted to say something too.
Mine is more a little bit different because I think for me, when it with Jeremy is saying, I understand where he's going, but I think I probably would have been okay with the running back pick if we had addressed other things on defense. Mm-hmm. To me, to go corner, third overall, and then running back, I'm like, so I haven't did the math on it yet, but I don't think many teams is getting cover sacks. And so I didn't have a problem with the running backs. I know we needed one. And my perspective is I'm not going to kill anything they do this season because all I got tired of hearing people say is he didn't have his guys and now he does. I think ultimately, if you're going to go in the running back direction, then like he said, you better have the offensive line up front to open holes for him. And we don't know that yet. And I think that's what that's a good point to have. I mean, even when the Dallas Cowboys took Ezekiel Elliott, they already had the line for him. So Ezekiel Elliott was an added bonus to an already good offensive line.
Yep.
Just saying.
So it's Bravo, and he's on our Above the Rim. If you haven't seen that, that's on Saturdays. Yeah, it's either on JMO's channel or Detroit Drew's channel. I want you to check that out. Bravo asks, who do you think will be the most exciting player? He said players here, actually, to watch for the next year for the Lions.
Well, I mean, I while we're on the running back conversation, I think DeAndre Swift is going to be an exciting player to watch. The Lions drafted that guy high for a reason. They are very high on him. And that's not necessarily to take anything away from Kerryon Johnson, but Kerryon Johnson's role is going to be severely diminished this year. It is. This and another thing to keep in mind is this is Darrell Bevell's guy. Kerryon Johnson was not Darrell Bevell's guy. He wasn't drafted when Darrell Bevell was here. So I think DeAndre Swift is going to have a major role, and maybe even right out of the gate. And because he's such a versatile guy that will be part of the running game and will be part of the receiving game, he's going to get a lot of touches, and he's an extreme talent. Like as much as I was dogging the pick about the value, I don't have an issue with the player at all. I think he's a very talented guy. I think he's going to be a lot of fun. And I think this coaching staff is absolutely in love with him. So they're going to try to put the ball in his hands any way they can. So I think you should be excited about him. I think you should be excited about him as a player. Just savor it now because he's, like I said, probably not going to be on the team in 4 years.
Terrible. Okay. And I'm trying to move it along with the questions, and I want to get some of the panel involved too, but I want to keep the focus a little bit more on Jeremy since he's our guest today. Michigan governor said today that the Michigan stadiums will not have fans until there's a vaccine. Do you guys think that the other NFL teams will be allowed to have fans while the Lions aren't allowed to?
That's an interesting question because, you know, the one kind of similar rule that they have in place right now is facilities aren't going to open up until all the facilities can open up.
Okay.
And that seems fair. But when it comes to, I don't think anyone has approached this question yet because obviously no one knows if there's going to be fans anywhere or not. I would hope in terms of, you know, keeping it a fair and balanced game that they'd say, well, if Michigan, if Whitmer decides no full stadiums in Michigan, then we have to honor that everywhere. And I mean, it seems like that's going to be a hard thing to enforce, right? Because local businesses are going to want their stadiums open. The surrounding bars are going to want their stadiums open. It's a decision that could really impact things beyond football. And so that, I mean, you're asking me to predict the future of a novel virus, and I can't do that. But it's a really interesting question, and it's one that I don't think anyone has really asked many people at this point because there are a lot of complicated factors there. In terms of fairness, if fairness in a football game is your priority, then obviously the answer is no. If one place isn't open, then they all can't be open. But if your priority is local businesses, if your priority is, you know, following the law of the state, then maybe it is going to be a different situation. And maybe it's something that Lions fans cry about fairness at the end of the season is Lions had to play in front of an empty stadium at home all 8 games, but they had to play in front of angry away crowds for 7 of their 8 away games.
That would be weird, man.
It's a reality that I think could realistically happen, but I just don't know how realistic. I wouldn't predict that to happen, but it's definitely an interesting question to think about.
All right, guys. I'm sorry we didn't get to a lot of questions tonight, but we are running on 2 hours and I want to get this wrapped up. I'm going to maybe take one more for you, Jeremy. I'm going to look for one more and then we're going to get into our final thoughts and wrap up. I really appreciate you being on for so
Oh, no
long.
problem,
I
man.
probably shouldn't have brought up that we were on 2 hours because you probably didn't know.
It's all good. It's all good. I mean, what else? I got as much as you say I'm a busy guy. This time of year, I'm really not that busy, especially when I'm stuck in my house all day.
Yeah, don't say that because I'll have you on all the time. No, but I really do appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, it was how many free agent signings do you think will start this year? That was one. And I'm gonna have one more, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
All right, let me run down the list. I got a list in front of me here. So Vaitai will start at right tackle. Danny Shelton will start as your nose tackle. Desmond Trufant. So that's 3. God, that doesn't seem like a lot. Is there more? Nick Williams. I don't think Nick Williams is going to start. I think he's going to be a rotational guy.
Harmon will start.
Harmon will probably start. He'll definitely have a significant role, whether it's technically starts or not. And technically not a free agent addition he was traded for, but we'll let it slide.
That's true, actually.
So that's 4 guys. I think that sounds about right. 4 starters, and then you throw in Nick Williams. Oh, Jamie Collins. You're right. Sorry, Jamie Collins is number 5.
Okay. All right, that's a good one. How many years of experience of watching the Lions football each one of you guys have? Okay, for me, it's over 40 years.
Got me beat.
That's where I'm at. I was letting people know I'm 50 years old, so I've been watching them probably a little longer than that, probably since I was about 8, I think, somewhere in there.
Yeah, mine's about 30. Don't judge me.
I'm
Well, I think those-
35.
Say, Tim, go ahead.
35.
35.
Hey man, mine is a little bit over 20. Y'all got me feeling young over here. I only got 20 years of misery.
You're a young
I
man.
only got 25. I only got 25 years of misery. Y'all got 50 over there.
No, I got 40 some. Yeah, Jeremy.
I'm high 20s. Or
High
maybe low 30s. I don't know. I can't really remember back to my childhood in terms of like 4 or 5 years old, but I think I was fully in by 6 or 7, so that puts me at about 28, 29.
Nomas, how about you?
Around where Jamie about almost 25 years or so.
Okay. So we got a bunch of old people on the panel today, folks.
But you know what? What's so messed up?
Is.
But you know what's so messed up? We were like a few years before the really bad thing happened with the whole 0-16. That's what makes it so bad for us.
Oh,
We really had
way
it bad.
before that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Monty Clark.
Oh, yeah,
so.
Monty Clark. Yeah. Gary Danielson as a quarterback.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into final thoughts, and we will start with you, Nomas.
First, I have to say thank you to Jeremy Reisman for donating time to come on here with us, man. We really, 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 really appreciate that. And we hope to see you again soon. And as far as the DSA chat, we hope that we can get a high standards team this year. I want everybody to be as patient with the off season as can, because the way this team rotates, they need all the time they can get to get development. And I want no excuses heading on this year and later on. So I want the best of what's best for this team. Again, if y'all haven't checked out our website, the DSA website, link will probably be in the description along with the rest of our channels. I want everybody to stay safe, wash your hands. God bless everybody in the panel and the chat. Ronald Reisman, thank you very much.
All right, JMO, what's your final thoughts for today?
Man, I gotta thank Jeremy from coming on, man. This 313 JMO. You probably see me in the comments talking to the lesser Lions fans that talk crazy. Like, because I'm so proud of Detroit.
I got you. Yeah.
And I just want to say to all of the people listening, like, you know, the way we just did draft picks and free agency was very similar to some of the opinions that Jeremy had. And I just want to say y'all killed us for it. Y'all thought we were being very negative. And we weren't being negative. We were just saying, you know, some of these picks, we don't hate the players, but it's about the value. Some of these free agency moves didn't make sense. But let's just hope that Matt Patricia can stop being garbage and we can get our act together. And, you know, I don't want another Matthew Stafford 4th quarter comeback type season. Yeah, it'll be nice to watch. Cool. but then we lose at the end. So like I'm just not ready for that. But I thank you, appreciate it. We with DSA, we're just trying to build a platform for all of the Lions fans to come talk and analyze and know the game of football. And that's what we do over here. We thank you for being a part of the show. And everybody in the chat, make sure you like that video, subscribe to everybody in the DSA, and make sure you follow Pride of Detroit on Twitter if you haven't already.
Okay, so Tim, your final thoughts.
Okay, well, once again, thank you, Jeremy,
Sure.
and thank you all your fans out there for listening to us. But as I see it, we just gotta stop the BS and win some damn games.
Short
Amen.
and sweet. I love
Amen.
that, man. Okay, I'm gonna do mine, and then we'll go to Jeremy, and then we'll go to Luke. So mine is a public service announcement tonight, everyone. Blue Kool-Aid can be dangerous for your emotional state and overall mental health. Please drink responsibly. Okay, so we're going to go to Jeremy. What's your final thoughts on the evening, sir?
That was the perfect lead up because mine was going to say, don't lose hope.
Or
Absolutely.
hopium.
Because
I got some for sale.
listen, things look dreary on the defensive side of the ball, but things do look pretty nice on the offensive side of the ball. And I do think that we just don't know. Like that's the one thing I want to come back to is with the schedule just came out. Everyone's looking at every team like, oh, that's a win. Oh, that's a loss. We don't know anything about those teams. We don't know anything about the Lions. We like to think we do. I like to think I do. I write for them for a living and pretend that I do, but we don't know. So keep hope alive. You never know what the season's going to turn out, and keep hope that the season even happens. So it could be a really strange year. Weird things could happen. I do think football will be played. So you never know. And I also want to send a quick thank you to everyone on this panel because that was the quickest 2 hours I've ever had in my life. So had a lot of fun.
We had a lot of fun.
Thank
All
you.
right, now we're going to go to Luke. Luke?
Again, listen, we can't thank Jeremy enough. Y'all don't realize that me and Jeremy are related. He doesn't know it yet, but it's happening. Okay. But no,
Maury, am I about to find out who's my
I
father?
know, right? When you jump out of
Luke?
here, everyone, when you jump out of here, if you look, there's a link on the screen. There's a link in the description. Former Detroit Lions safety Glover Quinn is live right now with former Detroit Lion Darius Slay on his new YouTube channel, The DB Room. He has about 593 subscribers. We want to make sure that we support everything Detroit based. So therefore, I'm asking you, if you are in here, when you leave, go over there to the DB Room, say shout out to the Detroit Pride Nation, one roar, one pride, one everything, and give them some support. Hit the like button for them. Make sure that you also subscribe. We're trying to get every promotion we can get for the Lions because the media is not fair. It's not fair when it comes to the Lions half the time.
Sorry, Jeremy.
No, but Jeremy, they do something that I think most major media outlets don't do. They focus on the target team, and I think that's needed. That's what is needed. Because if you look up and try to see us get it, when we signed CJ Anderson, it was about what the Rams lost, not what the Lions got. And to me, that's where we got to do better. Now, with that being said, we always have to end the show on the positive note. So today I have a quote, and this quote came from a very unlikely source. I didn't even know it was going to happen. It just happened that way. This source comes from Elmo. That's right, people. The little red monster from Sesame Street. That's correct. So here's what Elmo says. Elmo says that every dark day can never be dark because there has to be light to shine. Now, I want y'all to take a second to think about that because we may be in one of those dark areas. And some of us are in that dark area just solely based on the simple fact of this stupid virus. But understand that there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's no such thing as darkness when there's light. And what I think Emma was trying to get us to understand is that we need to be very thankful and happy of the simple fact that we are here to see that light. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe to all the members of the DSA. Make sure you check out my man's Jeremy because he be in there writing sometimes, and sometimes I'll be needing to send him an email. But hey, he focused, and I love it. Make sure you check him out, okay? Check out SB Nation, and everything Detroit Lion based, because we want that support. One pride, one roar, and that's always, don't be no chump, please do your research.